Hi, everybody. My name is Rob Dawalt, and I'm your professor in JUS 331, which is juvenile justice. Uh, just trying to find different ways to stay in contact with you and share a little bit about what's going on. I had been working in addition to teaching for Southern New Hampshire University. I was working in addictions counseling, just trying to help out there. But because of this coronavirus situation and different things that were going on with my own personal health, I decided I better stay home. So then I've been kind of just rattling around the house, of course, reading and grading and all that kind of thing. But and I always felt like in the back of my mind that I wanted to spend some time on research. So I've started working, and I wanted to share this with you all. I'm working on a research study and a paper. It's really more of a literature review on the effects of lead, like lead pipe and lead paint and lead in gasoline over a period of really the whole 20th century, and the effect that it had on people in terms of causing crimes. And I've shared this with a couple of you just in little emails and things like that, but I'm really getting more serious on this because I found quite a little bit of scholarly work that's been done on this. But I thought it would be good to kind of break this down and put something out there for the faculty and the students at Southern New Hampshire University that we could share, because what it has to do with is causation. What causes crime? This is what people write about and question and why how does crime happen, and especially juvenile delinquency, and how does juvenile crime happen. So a lot of it is connected to poverty. We've seen that before, but what we didn't know and what we've come to know is that the poor live in poor housing. They drive junky cars, and a lot of them are in places where the water that they drink comes out of old lead pipes. And so the inside of the pipes, over a period of like 100 years, literally, I mean, a lot of these pipes were put in the ground in like 1870. And so as a result, these pipes have started to break down. And I'm sure some of you have heard of Flint, Michigan. This is a big deal right now. Well, it turns out in 2014, the city of Flint decided that they were going to switch their water service from a very good program that was being run by the city of Detroit. It was all up to date. And it was City of Detroit Water and Sewer. And they were drawing water out of Lake Huron, and they were treating it, and then they were sending it on to not only Detroit, but also a number of surrounding cities. And one of the ones that was the furthest away, but still connected, was Flint, Michigan. Well, what ended up happening is they wanted to try to save money, and so Flint switched over to an older service in their area called the Flint River Water Works. So they were drawing water out of the river, and just like overnight, people started complaining. There were a lot of problems. The water looks terrible. My skin is itchy when I take a shower. My clothes are not clean when I wash my clothes. Well, little did they know the effect that it was having on children, because within just 2 years, from 2014 to 2016, they started studying the blood of children. They actually do little blood samples, urine samples, even feces, and they would study all these things in these different labs. And they found that the blood lead levels in some of these young children between 2 and 5 had doubled. Now it was like from 2.5 parts per million to 5 parts per million. But in worst case scenarios, the blood lead levels in these very young children, about 5 years old, had gone up to 6 parts per million, which apparently is bad. I mean, for one thing, it's a tremendous increase in, just like I said, overnight. Now, the other part of this is that the long history of this first started with a concern about lead paint. Now, many of you may not even know this, but in the early days of my life, at least, a lot of your interior paint was had some lead in it. Made it, and especially if you wanted like shiny paint, then oil-based, what they call oil-based paints, would have lead in their additives. And so, like, let's say you painted your window frame and your windowsill on the inside of your house, and you had little kids there running around, and they're kind of famous for crawling up on the windowsill and then just kind of like cutting their teeth, on the wood, on the corners of these windows. And over time, it was found that a lot of poor people lived in houses where the paint was old, it was aging, and so they were finding higher lead levels in people. And this study was run by Housing and Urban Development. It's a federal agency that's responsible for a lot of low-cost housing for the poor. And then simultaneously, there was a study being done on gasoline. And a lot of the older cars from the 60s and 70s, and even older, 50s and so forth, they used lead in gasoline because for some reason, the lead made the car run better. I mean, it didn't rattle and things like that. In fact, I remember in the mid 70s and buying some cars and having to switch over to this called unleaded gas. You see that now, unleaded gas, and it would the car just wouldn't run very well. I mean, and they had to make a lot of efforts and do a lot of experimenting and so forth to get automobiles to run better. So that's one of the things that is involved in it too. So these three causes that we're looking at, water, paint, and gasoline, were affecting people because kids would be sitting in the back seat of these old cars and they'd be driving around, and the fumes from the exhaust were going up into the passenger cabin area of the automobile, and it was affecting children the worst because they're sitting in the back seat. And so between that and then the drinking water and the chewing on the trim, and they also said a lot of these children were not just cutting teeth, but they were hungry. So they would just chew on anything, and that would be broken plaster or wood trim or anything like that. So I'm just fascinated by this. I had heard about this some when I was doing some graduate work earlier, but I didn't really get the full connection, and I didn't even think about the water, for example. So I'm excited about it. The other thing I wanted to get across to you is, we are worried about your welfare. And if you have any problems or concerns, I've had a few of you come to me and say, that my health isn't good, or, that you need some extra time to turn in some papers and stuff. I don't need a doctor slip. I don't need any of that. I just need you to tell me. I would rather know than to wonder. So if you have any worries or problems or concerns that you want to talk to me about, just get with me at my email address. I've been putting some emails out to you, and I'll be sending you an email later today, which today is Easter. And I also wanted to say happy Easter to all of you that are celebrating Easter today. we got up at the crack of dawn. We watched Easter pageant. Has been in my hometown up in Marion, Indiana for many, many years, since back in the 20s and 1920s. And so it's probably getting close to 100 years old. And a lot of my family and friends, we would get up like really early, 5 o'clock in the morning, get in the car and go to this Easter pageant, and they would tell, the story of the crucifixion and the second or the rising of Christ on Sunday, and then we would all go out and have a big breakfast afterwards. So that was kind of a ritual that we had for many years. Well, hey, I've been at this for it says about 11 minutes, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. I just wanted to tell you that, like our dean says, we have your back. So if you need us, uh, get a hold of me and let me know what's going on. And then also, I wanted to share a little bit because I am going to be sending you some of this material, and keep an eye out for our new journal that's going to be coming up, because it's going to give you a lot of good ideas about research material and that sort of thing. Basically, most of my interests revolve around juvenile issues, trying to work with families to help the kids. And so the addiction counseling thing that I got into is just kind of as an extension of my worry about the family. And one of my other interests was in fathers and fatherhood. And I worked really hard as a case manager and facilitator in a fatherhood education program so that fathers could have more of a role in their children's life. And so these are just some of the things that I've been interested in. And if I can help you or if I can answer any questions, feel free to get a hold of me. Well, thanks for paying attention. I'll be back with you. If you have any questions, like I said, get a hold of me, and take care of yourself. Bye now.